Welcome back everyone for fourth week of IC Tune. Last week we learned about how we play drum set. Hopefully it was not easy, but good enough for you to practice. Okay, we are going to review what we learned last week, and we are going to go on to the new topic. So let's begin this week's lesson. We have learned basic of 8 beats, and we also have learned variation of 8 beats. So I'm going to play the very basic beat first so you can remind what those were. Okay, so let me play that rhythm first. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So as you saw, the bass drum were playing at 1 and 3, and the snare was playing at 2 and 4. Okay, so for the first variation, I'm going to add a bass drum at the count of end of 2. So it's going to be 1, end of 2, and 3. Let me play with the count. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and the second variation was 1 and 3 and end of 3. There was a second variation. Okay, so I'm going to play that with count as well. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and last one was 1, end of 2 and end of 3. One and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. As we were learning these rhythms, I told last week that it's important to know how to count, but at the same time, it may be easier for you to remember by remembering the sound. So let's say instead of saying, oh, I know that I have to play bass at 1, 3, and end of 3, rather you could say, oh, the rhythm is kung, ta, kung, kung, ta. And by saying that, by having the rhythm on your brain, or by feeling those rhythms, you may be easier to feel that, oh, it's easier to learn. Okay, so it's important to know how to review those rhythms either way, by counting and by making sound as well. For the intermediate class, we also had the homework of writing down the rhythm of 16-beat bass drum. If you have not given it to me yet, we are going to review when we have a Zoom meeting. Now we are going to the first new topic for this week. It's called the drums rudiments. Okay, so what we mean by rudiment is that without playing, well, first of all, without playing right foot or left foot, you're only playing with your hand about various strokes. So we have learned single stroke and double stroke, but we are mixing those to make a new rhythm. So there will be 8 notes, there will be 16th notes, there will be quarter notes sometimes. So there's going to be a lot of things that you are going to play at the same time. But I'm going to show you first how you play, or how we should play, and then I'm going to explain a little bit more about this, okay? So I'm going to play with metronome. When you play rudiment, you always should play with metronome, okay? So I'm going to set it to 60 and show you first, okay? I'm just going to play the first line. I'm going to play with BPM 100, and I'm going to explain a little bit more to you how to read and how to play. Okay, so I'm going to set metronome to 100 BPM, and here we go. when you look at the score, there are mixture of eighth notes and 16th notes. And there are also a signal over the note, okay? When you see a signal that looks like a parenthesis, it's an accent, which means that you have to play that one louder than the other ones, okay? So when you play louder, I don't want you to tense yourself suddenly and just play with force. Rather, you have to lift your stick up higher than others and just let it go. Then it's gonna make a louder sound naturally. Okay, so when you look under the beneath the notes, you will see an alphabet. Okay, either R or L. So as you know already, R means right hand and L means left hand. So you can see that most of the time we are going to go back and forth between right and left. And when you see the notes that do not have alphabets, that means that they are going to be, again, right and left all the way. Okay, so we have both starting from right hand and starting from left hand, and we already know that starting with left hand would be harder for you. Okay, so make sure that you keep that in mind and always start from slower tempo. So you can not only play eighth notes but also 16th notes with the same tempo. Okay, so that's gonna be the rudiment for this week. What we are going to do with this rudiment is that you are going to add your feet onto this one now. So I hope you remember what we learned a few weeks ago, that we are playing right foot on each quarter note. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you're playing your hi-hat, you're stepping on it on second and fourth beat. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you do this together, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, what I want you to do is play this pattern, practice this pattern every day. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes or an hour. It could be just 5 minutes to 10 minutes. Okay, that's long enough. But the purpose of this practice is that without thinking of it, you still should be able to do this. So I'm not thinking about it now. I'm talking to you, I'm explaining stuff, but at the same time, I can still play this without even thinking of it, okay? It's like you're eating your meal. You don't have to think about it, but you still can eat your meal while doing other stuff. You can look at your cell phone, you can look at the news, you can do whatever that you want to do. It's the same thing. While you're doing something else, you still should be able to do this pattern, okay? Once you're okay with this pattern, once you don't even have to think about it, then you can add this rudiment that we played. Okay, so if you start the first line, let me show you actually how it's going to sound like. Okay. And when you play the first line, you are going to switch your hand and start with your left hand, okay? It's going to be even harder because you are used to play your right hand and right foot at the same time, but just by switching your hand and starting in left foot, it's going to feel much more awkward, okay? Let me show you that example too. See? So you'll feel when you start practicing, but just by starting in left hand, even though it's the same rhythm, everything is the same, it just feels a little more awkward, a little more tricky, and a little harder. Okay? So make sure that you need to practice this with the tempo that you can actually think while you're playing. Now I just played with a little bit of tempo because I have limit of time, I have limit of certain situation that I have to cope with, but hopefully as you're practicing, you should be able to spending your time on this and make sure that you become patient with this because it doesn't come to you just right away. You need to spend some time, and but as the time goes, as you put your time into effort and practice, then it's going to come to you by then. Okay, so make sure you spend some of your time on this, and your fit is okay. Then you can add your hand and rhythm. So Originally, I wanted you to play all this 4 rhythm, but if you can't do it because you are spending some of your time to get familiar with this feed, then I just want you to do 2 lines, okay? But if you can do more than that, you're more than welcome to do this, okay? So if you can do all 4 lines, that would be even better. But if you can, just 2 lines is fine because we have something else for you to practice as well, okay? Now this is intermediate exclusive again. Okay, so we have learned the rudiment, and we are going to make ad lib out of this rudiment. So what we're going to do, play the basic 8-beat rhythm. No additional bass drum or snare drum whatsoever. You just play basic 8 rhythms, and you are going to play this pattern of rudiment on the snare and tom. Let me show you first, and I'm going to explain it to you how you're going to do it. Okay. So what I just played is the first line of the rudiment. Okay, so I just played the basic 8-beat rhythm, and I was playing a measure by measure in between the rhythm. But then I was playing snare, ragtime, snare, floor time, tom by a beat each. So I was playing first 2 notes, which makes a quarter note on snare. Next 2 notes, again, which makes a quarter note on ragtime. And next 4 notes on third beat on snare, and then last 4 notes on the floor tom. And then I go back to rhythm. Same thing for the second measure. 1 and 2 E and a 3 and 4 E and a. Go back to rhythm. And the third measure. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and 4 and. And then finally last measure. 1 E and a 2 and 3 E and a 4 and. Note that I wasn't playing any accent because if once you play accent, it might trip you up while you're going back and forth to the other parts of the drum. Okay, so there is no accent, there is nothing. You're just keeping your hand, you're just keeping the notes itself, but you're playing on different things. Okay, so it's going to be not only first line, second line, third line, fourth line. Okay, fourth line is going to be a little bit harder for you because it's based on the double stroke. So while you're playing single stroke beat bass rhythm, single stroke bass beat rhythm, and going to double stroke would not necessarily be easy, but it's going to train you in a certain way. Okay, so let me just show you fourth line because it could be a little harder for you. Okay. 다시. Let me show you the fourth line because it could be a little harder for you. And you are going to switch your hand, which your left hand starts first, where we started right hand started first now. So that's going to be your another assignment for this week. This is it for today's ICT. As you are getting learning more and more, it's getting harder, and you may get bored of playing all this stuff. But this is actually a preparation for you so that you can play more fun things later. You can play extra rhythm, you can play more on drum, and this is a preparation and being ready for that. Okay, so hope you will be able to practice. And also because we are staying at home, even though you are taking classes through internet and whatsoever, we have more time to practice. Once you start to go to work, once you start to go to school, and once you have everything back, you will have less time practicing. So hopefully you will be able to use this time for your own good by practicing, spending more time on it, and you can get better, much better by practicing more on the drum. Okay. Hope you stay safe and stay healthy. I'm going to see you next week. Thank you.